We've seen more and more evidence over time that Putin is paranoid, but I'm telling you, he's paranoid. He's scared. And the evidence is now like, okay, let me give you an example of what I mean by that. We believe what you do more than what you say, right? And like even when you're dealing with your kids, like if you say, hey kids, don't smoke, but then you're like, guess what? They're going to smoke, right? That's the way it works. So Putin is showing by his actions that he is paranoid. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This came from an article in Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Where's Putin? How the Kremlin hides his location with 3 nearly identical offices. Okay, well, your first thought might be something like, well, he wants to show that he's working in his office. But why? Like, think about any American president. So you're working at the White House, and then you go off to Camp David and you're working there, or if you're Trump, you go to Mar-a-Lago, or Reagan would go to his ranch in California, or what? I mean, it's okay. You can be at those other places. He's trying to hide the fact that he's not in his office and that he looks like he's in his office. That's different. Minor differences, such as the setting of a door handle and the grain of a wood on a document tray, indicate that Putin has used 3 nearly identical offices in different parts of Russia. Sistema RFE-RL's Russian investigative unit identified discrepancies in video footage and travel records showing that many meetings claimed to occur outside of Moscow were actually filmed in Sochi or Valdai. Now, this is important because he's not only scared and he's going to these other offices, so he's not in Moscow because he can't really put the air support right around that office. It would just like be a bad optics, but he put a dozen anti-aircraft things around one of his dachas, and that's where he goes. Putin has increasingly favored the secluded Valdai residence. In a report aired on October 11, 2020, Russian state TV journalist breathlessly tells viewers what's in store. President Vladimir Putin's news about the test of a hypersonic Moscow missile has been boasting about other things. After the interview, more work, the reporter says, repeating the Kremlin narrative. Putin labors nonstop to keep the country safe and strong. A tag in the corner of the screen says Novo Agarovo, the main presidential residence in the Moscow suburbs. And the footage shows Putin heading for his office door and reaching for the handle. And that's the giveaway. The placement of the door handle and a few other details reveal the footage was not filmed in Novo Agarovo. In fact, it was shot more than 1,500 kilometers to the south in an almost identical office in Sochi. Okay, so it's kind of weird. Let's look at this video because they'll explain what's going on.
Чуть ниже оригинала, важно, в разное время. Часто они публиковались вперемешку даже в один день со съемками из настоящего кабинета.
Okay, this is the Russian one. I got the wrong one. Here, we'll look at this one here. Sorry.
It all started with a small detail, a door handle. In October 2020, Russian state TV aired footage said to be filmed at Putin's residence in Novo-Ogarevo near Moscow. But Sistema noticed something odd. The door handle in the video sat slightly higher than a seam in the wall behind it. In the real Novo-Ogarevo office, that handle is lower. This clue was enough to determine the video was actually filmed 1,500 kilometers away at Putin's residence in Sochi. And it wasn't just once. By analyzing around 700 Kremlin videos and leaked travel records, Sistema found that many meetings, supposedly held near Moscow, were actually filmed in Sochi or Valdai.
Okay, it's not a great crime. Like, he could do that if he wants to do it, but why would you be lying to people about it and just asking about where that is? And again, there's not just 1 but 2 copies of Putin's office. Roughly halfway between Moscow and St. Petersburg is one. In most cases, the meetings that ostensibly took places in that Novo Agarovo were actually filmed in Sochi or Valdai. Okay, let's go all the way down to the end and look at just a couple of last paragraphs. An analysis of footage and other evidence also shows that all but one of 30 appearances by Putin in the office in question between January and the end of September this year were filmed at Valdai. Okay, why Valdai? Well, Konstantin Gaez, a sociologist who studies Russian authoritarianism and bureaucracy, says that amid the war against Ukraine, which is targeting Russian energy and military facilities with increasing drone and missile attacks, there's a simple reason for Putin's preference for Valdai. It's a matter of security. He says that it's relatively exposed on high ground in Sochi, and prominent defensive features would attract the attention in the Tony Moscow suburb where his primary office is located. Valdai residence is more secluded, and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Russian service reported on August 12th that 12 air defense installations have been set up in the area around it, most of them Panzer S-1 missile systems. Right. He's paranoid. He's worried about getting hit, and so he thinks he's safer there. This is also a very common thing with authoritarians. They become increasingly paranoid over time. Okay, next story. What a tragedy. Italy killed Lavrov's interview. The newspaper refused to publish even a shortened version of it. So Italy's Corriere della Sera refused to publish an interview with Sergei Lavrov, neither in print nor online. According to the Russian embassy, the editors explained the refusal by saying Lavrov's remarks, quote, contain many disputed claims requiring fact-checking or additional clarification, which would exceed reasonable limits. Moscow quickly called it outrageous censorship. The Russian Foreign Ministry has posted the full interview on its website. In it, Lavrov talks about Nazism rising in Europe. He claims that European governments are trying to distract their citizens from worsening internal socio-economic problems by funding Kyiv, and describes Russia as a civilizational state with a 1,000-year history. The editors deserve an award for this. Well, no, not really. Okay, so the editors are almost being lazy. What you want to do is just the opposite. What you want to do is expose that, and then you want to ask hard questions along the way, or even show in context with the hard questions afterwards, if that's what you have to do in order to get through this. But you want to dispute it, not just deplatform it. Okay, Lavrov's anti-Baltic outbursts mirror pre-Ukraine war narratives almost word for word. That's kind of scary. ISW warns that what this follows a familiar pre-invasion playbook. It's not a forecast, but it's not to be ignored either. Now, we're going to come back to what is going on with that after this story, which is not fun. There's a corruption scandal involving Timur Mindic. Has emerged as a major political challenge for his former business partner, that's Zelenskyy. Now, as far as I can detect, Zelensky's hands are clean here, but it tars him pretty badly. There is this, if you need to read one story about the ongoing $100 million corruption scandal, read this story. So that's what we're going to look to. And as we go down into the story, on November 11th, Anti-Corruption Bureau charged 8 people with bribery, embezzlement, illicit enrichment. It also published tapes where the group, using code names and encrypted language, discussed alleged kickbacks and bribes. The main organizer of the corruption is Mindic, good friend of Zelenskyy's for a long time and former business partner. That's this guy. Okay. Out of the 8 people charged, Mindic and Turskmen have fled, and 5 others have been detained, the law enforcement source said. Now, what's the scheme? Well, basically, they would collect 10 to 15% in kickbacks from wait, hold on. Somebody showed me how to pronounce this the other day. Energo Atoms. Hey, how about that? I got it. Contractors in exchange for keeping their status as suppliers and for not blocking their products and services, according to the Anti-Corruption Bureau. Energo Atom has an annual revenue of around hryvnia 200 billion or 4.7 billion US dollars, according to NABU. The participants of the scheme blackmailed and pressured contractors by taking advantage of a government regulation that bans contractors from claiming debts in courts from certain strategic companies. And this is kind of, it's twisted and sick, but, quote, we'll just revoke the certification and cancel the technical specifications, Murinuk allegedly said on the tapes, describing his efforts to pressure contractors. Quote, it'll be total blanking chaos for the whole line of companies. You'll just end up on the blacklist. You'll be wiped out completely, and all your employees will be conscripted into the army, unquote. Okay, that's pretty uncool. Okay, in the tapes, the participants of the alleged corruption scheme were also expressed reluctance to build defensive installations for energy facilities to protect them from Russian attacks, which was kind of their job. So we won't build protective structures anymore, Basov said. I would wait, Murinuk replied. It's a waste of money, not worth it. Later, they discussed giving contracts for protective structures to a company that they control to earn money from such projects. Look, that's always bad. If you're having access to be able to double dip in some way or in Yeah, when I do fundraiser stuff, I always make sure that it's somebody else's link. Hey, go to that link, give the money to them, because I don't want to be culpable for that, right? Oh, by the way, I'll talk about a fundraiser follow-up and what we're going to be doing next in just a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So it's pretty bad. That's the end of that article. But here's some commentary that I think is useful. Zelensky's facing unprecedented uproar at home over this $100 million corruption scandal in the energy sector involving people in his circle. He has already fired the ministers of energy and justice. That's two. That's probably not enough. But this is all happening because Ukraine, despite the pummeling, nearly 4 years of war, remains a democracy with an independent anti-corruption judiciary that didn't hesitate in arresting those close to the very heart of power. Similar corruption would never come to light in Russia, but Russia will be using it to weaponize the case to argue for a stop to Western assistance. So that will be happening. You just keep your eye out for that. And then there was this other commentary that I thought was really good. If Ukraine wishes to have any chance to join the EU, it needs to immediately issue an EU-wide arrest warrant for Minduch, and the man accused of embezzling 100 million euro and who fled the country just before being arrested. Only Ukraine can issue it. Yeah, he needs to do that. Now, Zelenskyy, to his credit, did say that justice will be done and this process needs to roll forward. So that's good, but he's very close to something that could be very damaging, not just to him, but to Ukraine itself. Okay. Prime Minister Cervenenko has also announced a full audit of all state-owned companies in Ukraine, including those in the energy sector. She said supervisory boards have been tasked with reviewing operations with a particular focus on procurement practices. So that's good that they're working toward that end as well. Now, let's shift to something more positive. Ukraine is preparing or deploying the first of its kind drone wall, revolutionary defense against glide bombs and UAVs. Ukraine is preparing to roll this out as an entirely new type of air defense, a drone wall developed by Gerdes. It's not a traditional air defense complex, but an aerial minefield made of dozens of small battery-powered drones equipped with low-yield charges capable of intercepting UAVs and glide bombs even without GPS. So if there's enough of them in a tight, dense in a certain area, they can potentially hit it or blow it off course or something. DS-1 system launches interceptor drones after the radar detects a threat, forming a dense airborne curtain and altitudes of several thousand meters. The drones use a friend or foe identification system, approach incoming munitions, and detonate nearby, knocking them off course. Those that don't explode return to their launch pads for reuse. Artificial intelligence continuously reshapes the wall's configuration in real time to match the trajectory of each threat. Tests have already been successful. Ukraine will now become the first country to use this technology in real combat conditions. That's crazy and awesome. Now, while we're talking about that, Poland is talking about what it believes is that they're next as far as threats go. Let's listen to this. This is Sikorsky.
If Putin succeeded in conquering Ukraine, we would be next. And it's happened before, which is why we've been spending a solid 2% of GDP on defense for 20 years, and we're now spending 4.7% of GDP.
And the public are fine with that. They understand that and they get that.
It's amusing when my colleague, the finance minister, attends his meetings, his equivalents ask him, how do you manage, to have such a huge, and he says, well, I'd be eviscerated if I didn't. We will eat grass rather than become a Russian colony again.
Right. It's not hard to raise the money if the cause is good enough, right? I mean, and the cause here is we don't want to become another Russian vassal state. Finland gets it. Finland has 900,000 reservists. 900,000 reservists. Finland's only got 5.6 million people, and it has 900,000 reservists. So Finland's approach is going to be I don't want to take anything away from Finland, but in World War II, Hitler could have attacked Switzerland, but was like, that looks a little hard. Right? Because every man was, I believe every male was required to have a weapon in his house. Okay. Finland has that population. Okay. Sean Penner was talking about this. I always enjoy hearing Sikorsky speak, but I've long believed Moldova will be next. Poland is certainly on the menu, though. I was told that repeatedly during my captivity. I have no doubt that the threat is real. Russia absolutely hates Poland. So it could be, that could very well be what's going on. Okay, let's turn to the U.S. Just a couple little quick things, and we'll be on to that video about the fundraiser that you want to see. It's awesome. Secretary of State Rubio said the U.S. has nearly exhausted its options for new sanctions against Russia. There's almost nothing left to sanction. We've already hit all the largest oil companies. Now, Rubio added that Moscow aims to seize the rest of Donbass and cripple Ukraine's energy grid to break civilian morale. But he was saying essentially this, that we have to enforce existing sanctions. We've done everything that we need to do, and just wait. The pain is going to get worse. And I think the pain is getting worse. You're seeing that in article after article about Ukraine's energy day over day. In fact, I'm probably going to do a 2-day version of that, what's happened to the Russian economy, because there's just been so much in the last couple of days. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth was talking about this, and I think this helps us understand it's not terrible. I mean, it's not what I'd like it to be, but it's not terrible. If America is going to have to take the primary burden of what happens in the Indo-Pacific and deterring China, then Europe needs to be prepared to step up in its own continent and ensure that forces like Russia or others are checked properly. It's common sense. You can't be everywhere. Okay, it's not terrible. I wish the United States would do more and say, you know what, we're going to pummel them over here so that China doesn't do it, but okay. Meanwhile, as we're worried about China, breaking, China secretly bought a trailer park in Missouri. Okay, trailer park in Missouri. Yeah, it shares a fence with a U.S. nuclear bomber fleet. They hid behind multiple shell companies to pull it off. It's where America's largest fleet of B-2 bombers take off, and China owns the adjacent land. And you know there's got to be some kind of sensitive communications, probing kind of devices there. But wow. Just wow. Okay, so let's get to this video that Greg Terry just sent me. This was from our last drone campaign. They did one in the field. They did another one here, and we're going to be working with them again in the near future. So let's listen to this.
I wish you health. This is Raven from the Unmanned Systems Battalion of the Separate Mechanized Brigade. We are extending huge thanks to the YouTube channels of Greg Terry and Professor Gerdes and their communities, as well as Project Constantine and the All-Ukrainian Charity Foundation Napriam for providing 15 Hornet Queen drones. Your efforts will help us be more effective against the aggressor and protect Ukrainians. Practical help is what our soldiers on the front lines value the most, and we look forward to continuing our cooperation. Glory to Ukraine.
So, I mean, that's all good. I absolutely, I'm glad that the guy's thankful. I'm glad that we could do this with him. I absolutely hate that they have to do this marketing in order to get their drones. Like, that's just crazy to me. But all right, just last little thing. This is Darth Putin. He's not saying anything funny, but this is where I'm trying to go. President's web shop has a range of Flamingo products, seeing Ukraine has launched a whole load of them last night. So here are Flamingo clocks and T-shirts and other things along those lines. And his website here is Darth's EU web shop, shopfourthwall.com. What I'm trying to do is create a system like this. This is my thinking, where I can create mugs or T-shirts or whatever, but 100% of the proceeds will go to whatever our projects are. Like that's the intent, where I'm not seeing any of the money. In fact, I wanted to link it out so it doesn't even come through me, if that's possible. So that's what I'm trying to get to. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.